So this scene was actually a lot of fun to animate, especially with all these dynamic camera moves and the Naughty Otzel blowing up. And hopefully the humor of the Naughty Otzel statue blowing up distracts you from the fact that there's no reference to the Dark Eco that you just rescued.
I animated this scene just before our focus test deadline. The whole thing was animated in one day. It was a really long, grueling day for me. And I realized that I'd forgot to add Daxter, and I hadn't even started him yet, so I just put him in at the end, poked his head out.
This is the first scene I did in the game. I think Torn is actually one of the hardest characters to animate. The way he comes across is very cool, calm, and collected, and but occasionally he'll let out a little aggression or some anger of some sort. And I think those are one of the more exciting times with him. But it's cool to play that balance between cool and rage.
This is a very unique cutscene. We have a new technology that me and programmer Amir came up with. We spent time figuring out a way to constrain the camera to an in-game car that's set on a path by Amir, and it drives through the desert on set coordinates. And I animated the whole scene with these two characters just sitting in a car, sitting still, talking to each other, just talking heads, basically. And I didn't know how it was going to work out. We didn't even know if it was going to work until we finally got it all into the game, and it turned out quite successful. It's really a cool scene. You get to see the background flying by. And it was used also in one of the other scenes after the fact, and probably will be used much more in the future. I'll tell you when the action's coming.
The beginning of this scene is an example of what happens when an animator gets a crazy idea in his head, like, let's have all the lights turn on slowly and gradually. It's actually not quite as simple as you might think. Took a couple of programmers and a little bit of time to get it all working, but I think it looks cool. Yeah, this scene, when Dan Arey, our creative director, first told me that the precursors are going to be a bunch of Otzels like Daxter, I said, ooh, you gotta let me animate the scene where they're revealed. Little did I know that the scene was going to be nearly 4 minutes long and that I'd have to do it in about 5.5 weeks. But hey, you know, that's all right. These things happen. It's a very interesting, very complicated scene. There's a lot of characters. There's a lot of stuff going on. Here's a return of our precursor entity from the end of Jak 2, for those of you who actually managed to finish Jak 2. Congratulations. We've also got Viger in this scene. Viger, for me, I think, was one of the most fun characters to animate, not only because Phil Lamar, who also does the voice of Sig, did such a great job voicing him, but he's just got such an expressive face. So after he gets transformed and he's looking up and he's looking all smug about being imbued with precursor stuff, he has that wonderfully smug look on his face. Now, of course, at this point, this is where the illusion starts to fall apart. You know, Jak and Daxter have had just about enough of being told what to do after 3 games worth of being errand boys for the precursors, and so we have a nice little off-screen crotch grab from Daxter. Been waiting 3 games to do that. And now the moment you've been waiting 3 games for, the big precursor reveal. This is something that I talked about a lot with Dan, and we thought about many different ways that we could do this, and we figured it would just be best if we saw them from behind and they didn't quite realize what was going on, and then boing, and just a long, long take of everybody just sort of staring at each other and sizing each other up. These 3 precursor Otzels don't actually have names. They're referred to as Otzel Leader, who's the guy with the staff, Otzel Surfer, who's kind of the hey dude fellow, and then of course Otzel Dummy, who's the guy with the helmet over his eyes and who with the big buck teeth. Which is not to say that people with buck teeth are necessarily dumb, but you know, these are just the way these things pan out sometimes. This part was a lot of fun to animate everybody's little reaction takes to what the precursors really are. And frankly, I'd kind of like to be in the living rooms or parents' basements of America watching when a lot of people who've played the series before see the precursors for the first time, because I imagine we're going to get just as many people who would like the idea as just as many people who think it's the dumbest thing they've ever seen. Now, personally, myself, I was sold on it from day one because I'm a little tired of the cliche of, you know, the gods being these great, wonderful beings of light, you know, come down from a high on. And, you know, that's just, I think, what everybody was expecting us to do. And to actually have them all Otzels like Daxter, you know, some people may think of it as a cop-out, but I don't think anybody's going to see this one coming. I may be wrong. This part was also fun to animate Beaker changing into an Otzel, scaling his various bones and whatnot to stretch him into the proper shape, and then poink. Now this last part of the scene, because the scene was so long, and because I did have very little time to animate it, Jason Martinson, who's another one of our FMA animators, actually did some pinch hitting for me. So from here on in, it's pretty much all his animation. So thank you, Jason, from preventing me to have to stay one more night until 5 in the morning getting this done, so that you, the player, could enjoy our story.
You idiots! I told you we needed a plan B.
This is a fun one to work on. This is the first time we get to see the giant terraformer. It was the largest in scale creature we've ever done in the Jak and Daxter world. This is part of a 6-minute animation that I did for the actual boss fight when you're fighting this thing just after this movie. I painstakingly had him crawl over the entire world, this desert that we created, in this large loop. It took a very long time. Here's another giant terraformer scene. This one was really dramatic and was a lot of fun to do. I was able to take some of the animation that I did from the in-game terraformer sequence and actually give it a different angle. You usually get to look down on it during the game, and this was cool to be able to like look up at it and really see the scope of this thing. This terraformer was a rigging nightmare because during the animation we kept figuring out new things that we needed to do, have the terraformer come apart, have these wings detach from it, and I was animating pretty much right on Mike's heels as he was rigging this thing. So we had to go back and forth a lot. But the final product worked out really well. The particles and sound effects just really sell this scene, and I think it's really going to be exciting to see it. In all these scenes, I had to fake the camera a bit and fake the area of the desert so that you don't know exactly where he falls, because this could happen at any point during the gameplay. And then at this point, we switch out to the high-res level from the foreground object that I was animating and have Jak climb up the top of it. I faked it a bit and just showed him pop out at the end.
I gotta give props here to Troy Adam for his kick-ass particle work with the wall of sand. This scene had an alternate version. We needed to show some sort of connection between Ashlyn and Jak at the end, and this one here was the original idea, which came up between a bunch of us, and there was another alternate that Neil, I kid you not, Druckmann came up with, where Ashlyn pulls down Jak's scarf. And it was a little more intimate, but this version works just as well.
And here we finally come to the outro of the game after a long struggle of many hours of gameplay. This scene is actually rather static. There's not a lot going on, it appears, at least in first glance, but really there's a lot going on in terms of technology. Actually, this scene, for the longest time, we were having a hard time with even trying to imagine doing with all the characters on screen. In fact, if you notice, some of these characters aren't exactly what they might appear to be. Kira, for instance, and Torn, if you actually watch them, if you notice, you'll pay attention, they're hardly moving at all because basically the models were simplified to only have one joint of animation to minimize the streaming data because we just couldn't have this many characters on screen at one time. And also, as you can see, the Otzels, the precursors, they actually have environment mapping on them, and it causes a lot of problems in the DMA memory to have this much stuff environment mapped on screen. So this scene, as simple as it looks in terms of actual action, is incredibly complex. So here we go, watching these people sort of wrap up their little story here. Jack's about to leave and do his thing. It was really kind of a funny point that actually, up until the very last minute, we thought Jack was going to get on the precursor ship and blast off into space for parts unknown until we kind of talked about it, and Evan Wells had a good point that he thought, well, you know what actually we should do is we should ellipse back to the beginning of the game and have Jack change his mind just like Daxter did in the opening scene when suddenly when the desk clears, Daxter's there waiting with Jack because they're inseparable, and of course Jack is as well. So it was a nice circular storytelling idea, and it ended up being perfect. Finally, Daxter gets his payoff here. He's been talking about pants for 2 games. He finally gets his pants, thank goodness. And this crazy precursor seems to want to turn everybody into a precursor, so he's a little trigger happy, isn't he? So here we see that Tess gets turned into a precursor Otzel as well, and so Daxter finally gets to get his little girlfriend, which is something we've been dancing around with for a while here, what we're going to do with this problem. Here we see Jack and the precursor is getting ready to leave. As you can see, Viger turned into a precursor, kind of gotten his comeuppance too, and now he and Cleaver are going to be together, which opens up a lot of possibilities for the future in stories. Can you imagine these two together, trying to rule the world? The stupid guy and the smart guy? So now Jack's really kind of getting his last moment of truth where he's being asked to go off and become this great superhero. And so this is how we end our tale after 5 years of storytelling and gameplay. We kind of wrapped up this whole experience in the universe, and but you know, Jack and Daxter are inseparable. They're just too good together. So this is keeping true to the franchise as well. And you have every scene we've got to end with Daxter just getting his punchline, getting his last moment and his last laugh. So after 3 great adventures, yeah, I think life is good.